Good afternoon. Welcome to our meeting. We cannot find the chairman. We need a search warrant. But we will resume the meeting in just a few minutes. We'll give him just a few minutes to come in. We welcome all of you here today. Let's start the meeting with just a moment of silence, if we could, please. Let's all stand. Thank you. I didn't announce that.
Have you already done the pledge?
No.
Would you remain standing and we'll say the pledge? I'll start. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice Chair Wizenhut, for getting us started. I was another meeting. It was hard to end, but we did. So, welcome to everyone to the March 16th regular meeting of the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners. We do have Commissioner Woodbury is actually online or on the phone one. She's remotely participating today. And in fact, my directions say that if she could tell us what's up, that'd be great. And and that way we'll hear her voice, and we'll be, at least today, we don't have to wait roll call votes. We can actually just wait a moment to hear her vote. So thank you, Commissioner Woodbury. Are you there?
Chairman Martin, she is online. Commissioner Woodbury, if you can hear me, you need to unmute yourself.
I'll tell you, we will return to her at the moment after later and see, but anyway, here we are. Any citizens who are wishing to participate in the public session portion of the meeting, please call 336-422-1200. You'll be placed on hold until the public session begins. And if any member of the audience is here, interested in participating, you've not filled out a speaker card, you can do it now and give it to Ms. Matthews, our county clerk. All right. We have Nicole Pretty, I think, is here today, and she's going to give us what has been we're going on 3 years, a COVID-19 report. Go ahead, Nicole. Thank you.
All right. Great. Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to give you another COVID update. I think we are deciding on how frequently we'll move forward with these.
Volume working.
Is that better? I have to lean way in. Okay. Let me do this. We are in conversations currently to make some decisions on how often we'll be providing COVID updates moving forward, because we are seeing some positive things in regards to COVID, which I'm going to share with you today. Our cases have decreased by 13% within the last 2 weeks, and we've had 0 deaths in the last 2 weeks. So that's really wonderful news. That death rate has decreased by 33%. And currently we've got 22 Forsyth County residents that are currently hospitalized. You've seen this graph before. This just shows that downward trend in lab-confirmed COVID cases. And again, because of our decreasing levels, we are now at a community level of low. So that recommendation is to wear masks based on your personal preference and informed by your personal risk level. Of course, we always want to remind the community and the commissioners that public health is still offering free COVID-19 vaccines on a walk-in basis at our Highland Avenue Health Department site. And did throw in this slide for you, Mr. Plyler, from your question last time about what variant is out there most frequently. It is Omicron. It's a variant of Omicron, and it's been that way for the past several months. And just finally talking about COVID, the future of COVID, reminder that the federal emergency is ending May 11th. State vendor supported testing will end March 22nd. At-home test kits, currently we've got that 500 to 700 that have been distributed to the 7 library locations are still available. We have them at Public Health and here at the Government Center. I'm also happy to report that we will be having a vending kiosk, a COVID test vending kiosk that's actually going to be delivered tomorrow, and we'll get some training on that at the health department, and that should be ready to be accessible 24/7 by community residents at the public health department site.
Could I ask a question real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
With that kiosk, is that going to be, I know that you're still working through it, so
Yeah.
is it going to be held inside or outside? And is that at cost or no cost?
It's no cost. It is a free distribution center for COVID tests.
Okay.
And it will be outside,
Okay.
right outside the main entrance.
That's what I need to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And it'll just follow up, it'll remain free until, from now on, or will it have a price after the vaccines become commercialized in the summer?
I don't have a definite answer on the time frame of how long the test kits will remain free. I know we have a large supply of test kits here in the county, so my guess would be until they run out. The main concern about cost is really regarding COVID vaccine. That will be the summer. The COVID vaccine will be commercialized, so there will be a cost to anyone interested in COVID vaccine. However, Moderna did just announce that they're planning to make their vaccine free to all U.S. residents.
Oh, that's great, that's good.
So I have a follow-up question too. So you're saying that it's about 500 to 700 in inventory right now, the COVID test. They're going to be free. Knowing that the state is not supporting the testing anymore, will that be something that will be on the onus of the county to have to purchase in the future?
I would think so. I don't have a definite answer on that, but I know that we have already distributed 500 to 700 test kits. We have more in storage too to stock the kiosk and sites as they run out.
Do you mind me asking about how much we have in inventory?
Several. I don't have the exact
In the
number.
thousands, maybe?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Well, it'll be a while then, that's good. Any questions for Nicole? That's good, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
And just a thought on the frequency, I mean, maybe we could drop back to once a month perhaps until the end of this fiscal year and then kind of revisit that or something, I don't know, it's kind of a, I was looking at the chart that shows the two big, your graph.
Yes.
And at the time, way back on the left end of that, we're about where it was then.
Right.
And we were probably thinking we were in great shape then, and all of a sudden, zoom, zoom, we had those two big, kind of outbreaks. So maybe it'd be nice to see that little bar remain steady for about, a little while, and
Absolutely.
then say, yep, I think we're in good shape, and we can sort of, I think the reports have been very, very helpful. I know it's required extra time on your all's part, not only just simply being here, but keeping up with it and so forth. But it's been a good, I think, metric for the community, and from our standpoint, I think we feel like it's been helpful to know, particularly that hospitalization issue, and just really how bad I'm glad we're in a rearview mirror, I hope. But I know we thought we were in good shape at the left end of that chart back then, and so perhaps maybe we could monitor this a little more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chairman Martin, if I may, sir, I'm okay with that. However, I would like consideration that if we do come back to a level of medium, we can revisit more frequent
Absolutely.
reporting.
Yeah, that could be another way it could be a trigger issue that we just suspend our reports until we move back into medium. That might even be an easier way to do it, and then say we'll start coming back again.
Sure.
But I guess I'd hope you keep the statistics just like you do for a little while so we can kind of see how that looks long-term.
Yeah, that will not stop with our communicable disease department. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we actually address our business items today, our deputy county managers, both Chantel Robinson and Damon Sanders Pratt, are going to introduce 2 new department managers. So, Chantel, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Commissioners. I am pleased to introduce Shaylee Bowen as our new Geographic Information Officer. Shaylee, if you want to come up. Shaylee started almost a month ago and is the Department Director for MAP Forsyth. She replaced Joseph Sloop, who was promoted to Deputy Director of MIS. Shaylee comes to us from the city of Winston-Salem, where she was the Geographic Services Manager. She also has experience in GIS working at the cities of High Point and Greensboro. Shaylee has a Bachelor of Arts in Geography and a Master of Arts in Geography, and she's already hitting the ground running. I'm confident she's going to help us enhance our ability to tell our story through the use of maps, dashboards, and various applications. And so I'll give her a minute to introduce herself to you. Welcome, Shaylee.
Thank you all for seeing me today. I'm very excited. I have known great things about MAP Forsyth coming into this department, and I'm very excited to kind of be at the lead and at the forefront. My team is wonderful, and they've made this first month go by like a breeze, and I look forward to everything we can do for the county.
May I ask you how tall you are?
You can. I'm 6'2", and I also happen to be wearing heels that add another inch.
Well,
Might have been an inappropriate question, but by the way, I know Todd Luck wants to take a picture of you. Did you get it, Todd? You're good?
thank you and welcome.
But why don't you stop there and let Todd get a picture?
Show your teeth.
Sanders Pratt, thank you.
So due to my Napoleon complex, I waited till she sat down, not 6'2". So, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I'm pleased to announce that Chris Weevil, who you're very familiar with, has been selected to serve as the new Forsyth County Parks and Recreation Director. Chris is almost 32 years with Forsyth County Parks and Recreation. He has worked in the maintenance division at Tanglewood Park, eventually becoming the maintenance supervisor. Chris was promoted to Assistant Director of the Parks and Recreation Department, a role he has ably served in for the last decade. Chris is a registered landscape contractor and certified North Carolina plantsman, a certified arborist, a certified grounds manager, as well as a member of the International Society of Arboriculture and the Professional Grounds Management Society. He's had a hand in many Forsyth County park improvement projects and development efforts during his tenure at the county, and staff look forward to continue to work with Chris as part of our leadership team. Now, Chris couldn't be here today, but I will have him come and see you again when he's here. But I just want to announce that Chris Weevil has been appointed to the position of Park Director, replacing Mike Anderson after Mike's 37 years.
Thank you very much, and we'll certainly welcome Chris at a future day, so thank you. The first item on the agenda today is a public hearing on an ordinance amendment proposed by Planning and Development Services staff to amend Chapters 5 and 11 of the Unified Development Ordinance to add use-specific standards for pesticide, fertilizer, and other agricultural chemical manufacturing, explosives, and pyrotechnics manufacturing. And we'll start off with a presentation by Mr. Chris Murphy from Planning and Development Services. Thank you. All right, I'll do it.
A little technical difficulty, it's not on here, but the county clerk's going to pull it up and she'll just advance the slides as we go. What happens when you have 5 items between the briefing and the hearing? Way too many slides.
While we're on pause, I might get Commissioner Woodbury, I think, is on the phone. And maybe you can you say hello, Commissioner Woodbury, so we can hear your voice?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Chairman Martin, and to everyone else listening. Thank you.
Thank you. And when we vote today, Commissioner Woodbury, there's a little pause, so we will wait another second or two. So please go ahead and speak when you hear us, and then we'll be waiting to make sure we hear you. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, good.
You know, in broadcasting, Mr. Chairman, when we have a technical difficulty, we play music.
Here we go. All right, great.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, members of the Commission. This is UDO CC-17. This was a text amendment that was prepared in response to the Winston Weaver fire aimed at achieving greater land use protections for potentially harmful industrial uses. The proposed regulations follow extensive research and discussions with both the Public Works Committee, which was the Winston Weaver Task Force, and with the Planning Board. You go to the next slide. Just a little bit of background, the Winston Weaver fire. Plant fire was in early 2022, January 31st of 2022, which led us to assess the city's land use regulations for such facilities and the county's regulations. Staff researched how North Carolina peer communities address fertilizer plants through zoning restrictions. And our peer communities included the counties of Cumberland, Durham, Guilford, Mecklenburg, and Wake, and the cities of Charlotte, Durham, Fayetteville, Greensboro, and Raleigh. Of course, those are the large cities within the counties that were mentioned. Fertilizer plants in all those jurisdictions were only allowed in the community's heaviest industrial zoning districts. Classified as some form of chemical or high-impact hazardous manufacturing. And additional use restrictions of note included special use permit approval, enhanced setbacks from residential uses and zoning, perimeter security fences and walls, hazardous material management plan, and water supply watershed restrictions. This is just the chart that I'm not going to go through that in detail, but it was included in your packet that shows what the various units of county government have, and it also included what Winston-Salem adopted back in February. You can go to the next slide. Current UDO regulations, fertilizer plants are classified as chemical manufacturing on the NAICS system, which is the North American Industrial Classification System, or NAICS. Chemical and battery manufacturing are two of the 13 uses classified as manufacturing C. Manufacturing C within the city and the county zoning are only allowed in the heaviest industrial zoning district with GI. Any use involving the manufacture of hazardous materials is prohibited within 1 mile of the Salem Lake Watershed Protection Area. Slide. Under the proposed, what was proposed and that went to City Council and to Planning Board would apply to a subset of manufacturing that included chemical manufacturing uses that may involve ammonium nitrate, which was pesticide, fertilizer, and agricultural chemical manufacturing, and explosives and pyrotechnics manufacturing. What went to Planning Board and was recommended for approval to both the city and the county did include the use battery manufacturing that may involve lithium, which is primary and storage battery manufacturing. Through the discussions we've had at the county commissioners, we have, per your request, removed the battery manufacturing component from what you will consider today. So that leaves in there the pyrotechnics, fertilizer, and agricultural chemical manufacturing component that if you were to choose to adopt this, that these standards would apply to. Use-specific standards shall only apply to new manufacturing uses in the aforementioned chemical categories permitted after the effective date of this ordinance. It would only be the use would only be allowed in GI zoning through the issuance of a special use district permit requests coming to the elected body. Hazardous material management plan would have to be submitted prior to the issuance of a building permit. You can go to the next slide. Would not be allowed in any designated public surface water supply watershed, such as Salem Lake. There would be a minimum acreage of 25 acres, which is a function of the standards dealing with the perimeter setback and having ample room to do the manufacturing and parking and other things that you would need on the site. Parking would be allowed within that 300-foot area, but you would have to have a 100-foot perimeter setback along all of your edges. You can go to the next slide. There would be a requirement for a security fence or wall that would enclose the facilities to prohibit folks from coming in, wandering onto the site. And that it does have a landscaping requirement, and the landscaping would be located on the exterior of that security fencing or wall along the street. You can go to the next image. The planning board did spend several months vetting the research and draft recommendations for this proposed text amendment. We did discuss this with Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. and kept them in the loop as we were developing the standards. The adopted version in the city and the proposed county regulations are not out of line with regulations in our peer communities. You can go to the next slide. Again, I'll reiterate, based on some concerns that were voiced in the earlier briefings, we did remove battery manufacturing. That was included in the planning board recommended version. It's been removed out of the alternative version of the text amendment. You go to the next image. Public hearing, again, was held at the planning board back in October of 2022. There were no speakers either in support or opposition. Following the public hearing, the planning board voted to recommend approval of the request by a 6-2 vote. Again, the two who opposed it, one opposed it because it was too restrictive, one opposed it because it didn't go far enough in their opinion. Ultimately, it was adopted by City Council at their February meeting. Or maybe it was January. We've already moved past the slide, but it was adopted by City Council. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I have one question on and those other, particularly the county. I assume in some cases, the city and the county, on your comparables of the other kind of urban counties and then cities, that there may be some, or may have been a few differences between the city and the county?
There definitely was. Basically, when you look at the large comparables, you've got Durham city-county planning, and you've got Winston-Salem Forsyth County city-county planning. Everyone else is a little bit different in that you have a city-county, city planning, and county planning. So, of course, the regulations are slightly different, but for the most part, there was consistency in the fact that a lot of them had a higher level of approval. A lot of them did have enhanced setbacks from residential and some of those other things. And again, in looking at it, these recommendations aren't necessarily out of line with our peer communities.
But probably the one question I had was the 25-acre minimum. And I'm kind of curious about what other counties had in either number of feet setback. And I remember you showed us a little graph. If you do, basically 5 acres is roughly 1,000 feet by 1,000 feet. And you basically were, looking at that would kind of take the 400 setbacks plus a 200-foot frontage for a building, for example. Go ahead.
One of the things that what some jurisdictions had were setbacks that were from either adjacent residential uses or adjacent residential zoning. The last thing that we wanted to do, in our opinion, was bring forth a text amendment that someone could go out and spend an exorbitant amount of money to build a manufacturing facility, and then someone come in right after we issue the CO and someone build a residential house that on land that they don't control, that the manufacturer doesn't control, and then somehow make that new building legally non-conforming right out of the gate and then hamper their ability to expand. So instead of looking at a measurement from the property to surrounding residential property, we decided to come up with a setback on site which would provide some level of protection. I mean, 400 feet is a football field and a third. Provide some level of protection, but have it built into the site so that then we wouldn't have the potential that someone could come in and create a nonconformity. When you put that 400-foot setback on all sides and then come up with an area to actually build it, you come up with right around 21, 22 acres. In order to provide some flexibility and some ability to expand in the past, we just landed on 25. And then looking at that, within the city and the county, we identified, I want to say, over 70 or 75 sites that would meet that criteria.
Do you remember roughly what the sort of the distribution split was between the county and the city?
I don't, Ashley. I don't know if you still have that up, but if she can pull up the slideshow, it's off the back end of my slideshow. It shows what those parcels were. And again, I'm going from memory. I can't remember the exact number of parcels, but if you can click on that image there, those are the precise county sites that were greater than 25 acres. Again, I can't read it. It's in the purple and the yellow, and that's based on whether it was already zoned or whether or not it was recommended in an area plan for an industrial zoning. And there's a similar map for the city as well.
That's helpful. Any other questions for Chris and any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a motion, and my motion is that I hope we could delay this for another 2 weeks. There's still some questions that some of the commissioners have on the UDO, and I appreciate that you have removed the battery component of it, but there's still a few more questions. And if we could just delay 2 more weeks until everyone has their questions answered.
I second the motion, and my concerns is the size. Seems to me like that's excessive or extreme. That's just my opinion. And also the process, I've mentioned this before, the process in which fertilizer is made, primarily two. One of them's a blended process. They just take natural products and mix them together. And then the one like that burned, and if there was another one in the state, I don't know where it is or could be, but there's a few of them left anywhere. They either closed down or some, in some cases, some did burn in other places. And that ammoniated process is something that requires heat. And I don't imply that that's what happened at the other place, but they are two different processes. And so that's my concern. I don't the safeguards, that's reasonable, but even beyond that, it's I'll just leave it at that.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Wizenhut and a second by Commissioner Linville. Is there further discussion?
Just briefly, I think a 2-week delay is a reasonable request, particularly since Commissioner Linville does have questions about the definition. I would hope that it would be possible to get those resolved in that period. So I'll support the motion.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, you may wish to open the public hearing and then entertain a motion to continue it for 2 weeks.
All right. Well, then I will open the public hearing, and but we will not go through the speaker process. So the hearing is open. That's satisfactory. And is there a motion before we begin the hearing? And we've heard the motion, basically to postpone for 2 weeks this hearing and consideration. And we have a motion by Vice Chair Wizenhut and a second by Commissioner Linville. Any further discussion?
I'm sorry. I don't want to belabor it. I just does there happen to be anyone here planning who intended to speak on this today? If not, no no worries.
Okay, good. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Waiting to see if Commissioner Woodbury.
Aye.
All righty. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We will move ahead here. Next item on the agenda is a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting of March the 2nd, 2023. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Plyler,
Second.
second by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Oh, you got one online.
Sorry. For the minutes, Commissioner Woodbury. Oh, you did? Thank you. I'm sorry, I missed it. Madam Clerk, do we have any phone calls or cards, speaker cards?
Mr. Chairman, we have 2 cards.
All right.
Our first speaker is Jerry Brooks. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Name's Jerry Brooks. I live at 6010 Bluebonnet Lane, Winston-Salem mailing address, and I'm a resident of the village of Clemens. I've sat down over the last couple of months trying to write you folks notes, and it's very difficult. So I wanted to come and look at all of you. I thank you for the recognition back in December. Dudley needs to look up. I thank you. I'll let you know the crown has been put in the crown room. I thank you. It's been a service to serve you folks, work for you, work for the folks of this county. And Dudley heard me say the other night, we're all in the delivery of service business. Don't ever lose that sight. It's been a pleasure working with staff over the years. I've probably caused a bump or two in the road, but generally they got smoothed out, so we get together. But I wanted to come do that today and say thank you. You know, any of you are welcome to Clemens. Richard shared with me the pictures on the wall. We hope to sometime before it gets boiling hot weather to get the truck down here so all of you can see it. That's a significant piece of history for our fire service in this county, and we're fortunate to get it back. And I want to point out, you know, now, as years have gone by and what's happened with Forsyth Tech in our school system now across the state of these fire academies, I want to point out an individual in here today that started as a cadet at Clemens. He's sitting right back there. So the system works. And I just want to say thank you to all of you. It's been a pleasure. Mr. Bessie, enjoy your journey. This is a good group of people. And we're all in Forsyth County. Thank you, sir.
Well, Jerry, thank you for taking time to come personally and thank us. And I do understand the difference between a note and in person. So thank you very much. We certainly meant all of our accolades in great earnest and with great respect, and we certainly take your acknowledgement in the same way.
Well, every time I look at Mr. Plyler, I think of Marge and Dave on the radio. That's
Thank
a
you very
piece of
much.
history in this county, too.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank all of you.
Jerry, if you want to see that picture's in a good place, you can go by my office and see. Ashley had it, she either did or had it done. It got done anyway. And I told her if it's where to put it, if there's anything in its way, move it out and put the picture so you can walk and you can see it now. It probably could be exposed a little more, but I don't want to put it in a hallway. I want to leave it in the room in there, but you can just, anybody can walk by and see it.
Okay,
So if you,
Hey, Mr. Planner? Sir. We got fertilizer Clemens, so don't count us out. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. Mr. Manager, we have second speaker. Excuse me.
Dr. Arnita Miles, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon. Dr. Arnita Miles, 494 Smithdale Street, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 27107, District B. Thank you, County Commissioner Dr. Martin, County Commissioners, good afternoon. I am speaking to you today about item number 9, A and B, the ARP funding. Again, that is item 9. Thank you for increasing the county's funding in response to this target population, especially in the area of homelessness. For the last 3.5 years, I have been researching homelessness in Winston-Salem and Forsyth County, where I recently completed my dissertation, Understanding Homelessness in Winston-Salem and Forsyth County. This target population has 3 root causes of its issues: substance abuse, mental health problems, and a lack of affordable housing. If you look at the supporting documents attached to item number 9, there is approximately 70%, again, I state 70% going to administrative costs. Those administrative costs include furniture, moving, administrative costs, staffing costs, and costs for materials, while 20% goes to the root causes for this target populations, such as problems with substance abuse, problems with mental health, problems with finding low-income housing. I thank you humbly for the increased funding from Forsyth County for this problem. The funding is needed for Salvation Army. Salvation Army is the central place, the center of hope that houses women with children. They provide shelter for our homeless children. So again, I humbly say, thank you for the increased funding from Forsyth County. But I submit to you humbly, when these type of resolutions come before you, carefully read the supporting documentation, because those funds in this supporting documentation go to furniture, they go to moving costs, they go to administrative costs, and then it says that the funding can be adjusted in any way the program sees accountable. So again, I ask you, thank you for this time, thank you for this opportunity, but please look at these resolutions, because when you want to address homelessness or this target population, make sure that those funds are going to the population that desperately in Forsyth County needs this assistance. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Thank you, County Commissioners.
All righty, now, Mr. County Manager, we are ready to move forward for the.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, board members and staff and guests. We do have some business items for consideration this afternoon. We have reviewed these in briefing sessions and hopefully have answered all your questions. So I'll go ahead and dive in. Agenda item, we've got a couple of budget and finance matters. Item 4 is an amendment to the 2022 PAYGO Capital Projects Ordinance. You've got an associated part of that amends the 2020 PAYGO Capital Projects Ordinance that will essentially transfer $250,000 so that we can move forward to purchase an ambulance that was funded with those dollars.
We have a motion.
Move approval.
Motion approved by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Bessie. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Whoop, got to wait for Commissioner Woodbury.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item 5 is an amendment to the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget ordinance, appropriates revenue from Juvenile Crime Prevention Council grantees to reimburse unspent funds from fiscal year 2022 to the North Carolina Department of Public Safety. The total Juvenile Crime Prevention Council funding was $940,852. 4 agencies returned a total of $7,847.
Move approval.
Got a motion by Vice Chair Wizenhut. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Bessie. Any discussion?
I do have some discussion. Chairman Martin, although it's seemingly a little small amount, knowing that we have a juvenile crime problem here in Forsyth County, again, I have a little bit of unreadiness about that. So again, I just wanted to be heard that in the future, we're making better decisions relative to the vendors that we're using. And if they can't utilize these support funding, then we need to make better decisions in terms of what we're going to do in the future.
Sure.
So thank you for allowing me to be heard, Chairman Martin.
Absolutely. And Mr. Clarkson was here last week really to address that matter. There are some structural issues that just exist in that program which make it difficult. So I do think maybe the next time we bring in the JCPC funding request, Mr. Clarkson can come in and talk about, given all of that, what's realistic. And so I think that.
I do. Is there a way for example, when let's say you're 6 weeks from the spending deadline, is there a way that an agency has a pretty good idea? For example, if you're doing X number of psychological evaluations, you're not on track and unlikely to finish the remainder. Is there a way for them some of that to be reallocated to something that really could be spent in 6 weeks?
Unfortunately, 6 weeks is, it's too late. So the state's deadline to revert funds is May 1st. And so our next JCPC meeting, we will be reallocating dollars based on what individuals think that they will need by the end of the year. And a lot of these reversions have to do with the emergency shelter, which we need to make sure we have enough bed days for, and they are predicting that, but if they need less days than what was predicted, we are always going to have potentially a little bit that is left. The same thing with psychological assessments. I mean, they're just guessing what may need to be done, and that is based on the court counselor. So I do not see any situation where we will ever be at a zero balance, but we are definitely monitoring it very closely and trying to figure out ways that we can minimize the amount of the reversion. But I just say that because this is probably, it's going to be an item every single year that it's going to be very hard to have a $0 balance.
Well, last question you mentioned, I remember I was talking in the back or during the break last time. Is there a possibility, is this a state, you mentioned a state structural issue. Is there a way the state can sort of have a better way to handle this?
We will dive more into that because that is a state deadline, and we will ask some more questions to see if there's any possible other flexibility. So we'll have that answer the next time, because we will be coming in front of the board in another few meetings requesting approval to revert dollars for this FY23 so that we decrease the amount of the balance. So we'll have an answer by that time.
All right, thank you.
And Chairman, if I may, I'm not saying that I wanted to see it down to zero balance. What I'm asking for is, when these people first applied, they had a plan, and I needed to understand what's falling through the cracks or what's not happening. I would rather you come to me because you're needing additional dollars versus being in a reversion state. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, understand.
Thank you.
All righty. Item 6.
All right. Did we vote on that?
I'm sorry, excuse me.
We haven't voted yet.
You have a motion, please?
We already did.
I think we did that. We had discussion. And all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And we're waiting for you, Commissioner Woodbury, for your vote.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
All right. Agenda item 6 is amendment to the fiscal year 2022-23 budget ordinance that increases revenues and appropriations for the Forsyth County Department of Public Health from the Community Nutrition Services Women, Infants, and Children section of the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. This would increase their budget by $40,504. The WIC program total, which it would be brought to $1,895,653.
Good work. Move to approve.
Motion approved by Commissioner McDaniel. Second by Commissioner Bessie. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Oh, wait for Commissioner Woodbury.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item 7 is a resolution ratifying and authorizing execution of an interlocal agreement and acceptance of a grant from the Appalachian District Health Department for the Forsyth County Department of Public Health. There's an associated budget ordinance amendment that would appropriate $29,555 that would be used for furniture, water fountains, and first aid training.
Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Motion approved by Vice Chair Wizenhut.
Second.
Second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Very good.
I'm waiting.
Aye.
There we go. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Great. Agenda item 8 is a resolution approving an execution of an agreement with Moji Coffee and More to provide workforce development to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities with the American Rescue Plan Act funds. You've got an associated budget ordinance amendment that would provide $75,000 for workforce development training.
Move approval.
I'd like to make a motion from Vice Chair Wizenhut.
Second.
Second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. None. A motion carries unanimously.
Agenda item 9 is a resolution approving execution of an agreement with the Salvation Army to provide emergency financial assistance to disproportionately impacted residents with American Rescue Plan Act funds. You've got an associated budget ordinance amendment. It appropriates $330,000 to the Salvation Army. This would support 250 individuals with financial assistance. And I guess to Dr. Miles' comment, we probably structurally pushed, because we had an awareness of what was going to be sustainable through this, we probably pushed the Salvation Army to more of kind of one-time things, but since they're a much larger organization, what that does is allow them to use dollars they would otherwise use that are more sustainable for these purposes. And so, some of it was by design, I would imagine, as they put together their grant, because sustainability is going to be a fairly significant issue with ARPA dollars. And so that's probably a little of the backstory.
Move to approve.
We have a motion approved by Commissioner McDaniel. Is there a second?
I can wait till the motion's on the floor.
We have a second? Second by Vice Chair Wizenhut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I was looking, I took Dr. Miles' concern very seriously. I was looking at the attached documentation to the motion in our packet, and the subaward agreement between the county and the Salvation Army appears to actually have a tighter rein on this than I might have worried about. Whomever is the best staff person to do this should please check my reading. But if you look at the subaward agreement document, on page 1, the section 2.3, prior approval for changes, it actually does say sub-recipient may not transfer allocated funds among cost categories within a budgeted program account without the prior written approval of the county ARPA administrator. And on page 14 of that document, just a moment, scrolling down, Exhibit B, it specifies categories, including items such as mortgage and rental assistance to prevent foreclosures and evictions, first-time rental deposits, utilities, etc. And it appears to allocate 50% to rental assistance.
I was actually referring to the budget is probably where Dr. Miles was picking up most of her, what she saw. And Aisha, I don't know if you.
Yeah, I'll give some clarity there. So could you, do I got control of this? Could you scroll down to Exhibit B for me? Thank you. How you doing, commissioners? So,
Good.
9 into the, I think your emoji. Yep, so you want to go to number 9.
You were almost there.
Item
There it
number
is.
9, and then in the agreement, Exhibit B. I believe that's what you were referring to?
It's on page 14.
That's what I was referring to, yes.
Yep, right there. Go to Exhibit C. C.
Right there. That was it, wasn't it?
That's fine. Into,
C.
is it Ms. Miles? So for the cost item categories, we didn't create these cost item categories. It was given to us by the UNC School of Government. And the materials and supplies, the amount that's listed there, $233,334 is direct financial assistance to 250 of the Salvation Army clients. So 70% of the funds is going directly to clients.
Okay.
Any other questions in regards to that?
Thank you.
Got it. Thank you, Aisha.
No problem.
All righty, item 10.
No, we hadn't.
We haven't voted on that. That's all we did. That was during discussion time. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Waiting for Commissioner Woodbury.
Aye.
All right. Motion carries unanimously.
Very good. Agenda item 10 is a resolution authorizing an amendment to the Behavioral Health Crisis Services Revenue Agreement between Forsyth County and the State of North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services Division of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Abuse Services. This essentially kind of contractually allows us to have through 2026 to spend these funds, so it's more of a housekeeping matter.
Move approval.
Was approved by Vice Chair Wizenhut.
Second.
Got a second by Commissioner Linville. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Very good.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Agenda item 11 is a resolution authorizing execution of a contract between Forsyth County and EPR Systems USA Incorporated to use fireworks record management software. This is a not-to-exceed contract at $65,764. It would be paid through the county-wide fire overlay district funds, basically to support volunteer fire departments.
Move approval.
A motion from Vice Chair Wizenhut. I'll be happy to second that. Any discussion?
Second.
Got a second by Commissioner Linville. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously.
Very good. All right, you've got some tax administration items. Probably, let's take items 12 and 13 together. They are resolutions approving refunds by the tax assessor collector in the amount of $1,286.48, which is Board of Equalization and Review refunds, and item 13, $42,369.15, the assessor refunds.
Move approval. Motion approved by Commissioner Plyler,
Second.
second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right. Agenda item 14 is a resolution acknowledging receipt of the tax collector's report of the total amount of unpaid 2022 taxes that are liens on real property and ordering the tax collector to advertise such liens.
Move approval. Motion approved by Commissioner Plyler,
Second.
second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Carries unanimously.
Very good. You got reports, probably items 15 and 16 to be taken together as they're related. Item 15 is Wachovia Structures LLC Property Tax Commission Appeal Resolution Order, and item 16 is Lowe's Home Center Property Tax Commission Appeal.
Approval.
Motion approved by Commissioner Plyler, second by Commissioner Linville. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously.
And then
All righty.
items-
Now
yep,
we're
item
ready.
17 is the Human Resources Report for the month of September through December of 2022.
Is there a motion to adjourn the regular meeting before we go into a briefing session?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Plyler, second by,
Do you want to accept that last report?
Yep.
I actually thought we accepted all of them. It was just those two?
Yeah, I put those two in. I'm sorry. I didn't include 17 just because it was a little different, but, so item 17.
We have a motion to accept the
Move
Human
approval
Resources
item
Report.
17.
Commissioner Plyler, yes, motion, second by Commissioner, Vice Chair Wizenhut. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Now we have a motion to adjourn and move to the briefing session.
Move we adjourn for briefing.
Motion by Commissioner Plyler, second by Commissioner McDaniel. Any discussion?
5-minute break to come in from my
All right,
neighbor.
all right, we'll get to that. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All righty, let's take a 5-minute break. Pleased to call our briefing session for the March 30th meeting, 2023, which is coming up, and we're going to have go over that. In fact, the county manager is going to brief us on the items for consideration. We will have we have several public hearings. I believe Chris is going to walk us through actually 4 public hearing items, and we'll have a presentation just like this next Thursday too. Thank you.
Good afternoon again, and now we have 5 because we added UDOCC 17. So we'll have 5 whenever it comes time to do this again. The first item is, and actually I don't see that one. There it is. No, there it is. F-1624. This is, if you will recall, this is, oops. Now I don't know what I've done. This is a request that came to the county commissioners back in, I believe, February, and was continued to your March 30th meeting in order for the town of Walkertown to have completed a traffic study. Just to refresh your memory, this is case F-1624. It's a 15.5 acre parcel on the east side of Old Hollow Road across from Old 66 Circle. And the request is to rezone from RS20 to RM8S for a townhome project. This is the image. The subject property is shown on the Legacy Growth Management Area Plan. It is in an area just, it's on the edge of an activity center, US 158 and Old Hollow Road. Per the Growth Management Area Plan, it is located in the future growth area, but it does have the ability to be sewered, so therefore it should be viewed as a suburban neighborhood growth management area. This is the subject property highlighted in yellow on the as a location map showing the existing zoning RS20 and the surrounding zoning HBS, primarily to the east, to the west and northwest, and then RS20 surrounding the subject property on the same side of the road. Here's the subject property shown on the countywide aerial photography. You can see that the property is currently wooded. Again, they're close to the Walkertown Commons and Walkertown Landing shopping centers, just to the east of the town of Walkertown. This is the subject property shown on the area plan map. The area plan does recommend single-family residential 0 to 8 units per acre. But again, this parcel is sewered, and a lot of times we do look to feather down from your more intense commercial zoning to single family with a transition of, in this case, townhomes. So we feel like it is an appropriate use and density for this location. This is looking northwest on Old Hollow Road. The subject property would be on the right. This is looking north on the existing access easement. The subject property the access easement is on that subject property, but the development itself will be to the east or to the right of this access easement where the vegetation currently is. This is looking south on Old Hollow Road. The subject property is on the left. This is the site plan for F-1624. It is 100 townhomes, again served by a public sewer. There's a private pump station in the development that will pump the effluent across Old Hollow Road and into the public sewer system. These are the images of what the townhomes would look like. Again, through the briefing, the last session, there were some questions raised about the US 158 project and the Old Hollow Road project. Again, both of those transportation improvements are slightly to the west of the subject property. This is the NC 66 project that shows the intersection with 158 and the road work that is contemplated on the east side of 158, but to the west or to the right of the subject property, which is off the image, heading towards Kernersville. To summarize, again, what we've discussed in the past and looking at those road projects, the proposal does provide an ideal land use transition between the US 158-66 Activity Center and the nearby single-family homes and uses. The request will provide additional housing close to goods and services in a walkable area. The developer is proposing an additional buffer yard along Old Hollow Road and the private easement to lessen the visual impact of the development on vehicular traffic along Old Hollow Road. The road and right-of-way issues along NC 66 and Old Hollow Road are accommodated based on the trips generated by this project. This was heard by the Planning Board at their December 8th, 2022 public hearing. There were 2 speakers in opposition. The opposition did cite concerns with traffic, inconsistency with the plan, and walkability. Following discussion, the Planning Board did vote 7-1 to recommend approval of the request. The site plan does meet UDO requirements. And keep in mind, again, at your public hearing that we held back in February, we did hear from the town of Walkertown and the fact that they had contracted with a consultant to do a traffic study, and I believe that they are here to present the findings of that traffic study today. I can't answer any questions related to that, but I can answer questions related to the actual zoning case.
Questions for Chris relative to basically what the proposal is, the request.
Can you speak to some about traffic? Since we last talked about this, it appears to me that, go back to that slide, it's about one next to the last one, yeah, right there, that's a good one. That, and the process of the widening of 158, I think it's supposed to take them about 2 years. And I believe that they're going to start on the end closer to Winston. They're doing some work all along the way, moving power lines, that kind of thing. But from the intersection of 66 and 158 and 158 going northeast, I call it east, some says northeast, but and they're probably going to have some of these things on other parts of but from the intersection there, 66 and 158, from there to the end of the project for now, this is going to be just I don't know, maybe a quarter mile, maybe a little bit further than that, past Blues Creek Road. They're going to put either barriers by, some of them will be, I guess, concrete barriers. Other may be a distance between the roadways. You're going to have 4 lanes of traffic. Well, and I think overall, when they get done with that, the flow on 158 is probably going to be better. But in the meantime, while they're doing all that, it's going to affect some other things. And they're going to have these barriers or one thing or another. And you got to, if you want to go one way, you got to go the opposite direction for a little ways, more than a little ways to turn around to go where you're going. Well, they're going to, some of these accesses on 158 going into this, to the shopping center is going to be changed. They're not going to be, it's the best I can tell with what I've been told, that it'd be like a right in and right out. And some of those people were in those apartment areas, as well as everything within the shopping center there. If they want, are going to access 158, and they're going to plan on going back toward west, toward Winston, they're going to have to go down the road a ways to make a turn, go back. So I think that it's going to have impact with the traffic pattern of the shopping center there, that as the way it is now, the flow of the traffic pattern, some goes out on 158, it's going to head west, but they're not going to be able to do that because they're not going to let them cross, not going to fix, I don't think, unless they put a stoplight and it don't show one there. Does anybody, it just hadn't, I'd seen some of the, it's map like this, it's just smaller, and got to looking at it in more detail. And I think it's going to change traffic pattern, and I think that change is going to be some more of it on 66. Would you be able to get someone here from the DOT to, I don't know I don't think there's not anything we can do about it. It's just the fact that appears to me is going to occur.
Commissioner Linville, I believe what you're referring to is the fact that on the US 158 project, like right now on the shops at Walkertown Landing, the out parcel area on the north side of NC 66, there are a couple of entrances and exits onto US 158, and currently you can do both left and right-hand turns, so you would be able to turn to go back towards Winston left. And with the 158 project, it's going to have an island there where you'll either have to take a right and, like you said, go down a ways towards Blues Lake and then turn around to go back, or you'll have to go to NC 66 and go to the stoplight to go back towards Winston. Again, I can't speak whether I can have anyone here from NCDOT. I'm not sure. I think the manager, whenever we had our agenda briefing earlier this week, he was going to see if he could reach out to Pat Ivy and have someone here. Again, I think the important distinction here and the important thing to think about is, again, we're going to hear from the town of Walkertown and their traffic consultant as far as how the intersection currently operates and how it will operate once these improvements are made to 158 and 66. The important thing to remember for this zoning case is that there's already a base anticipated traffic that project would generate. And again, I can't remember exactly what the numbers are, but let's just say for single family residential, it was 400 trips for this, at 30 homes, and for the 100 townhomes, it would generate 665. So there's a 265 trip increase over what the base zoning allows. But again, that 265 in the looking at the overall impact of what that would have versus other planned commercial activity in the area and the existing traffic, the question that has to be asked and answered is, does that 265 trips for this townhome project, does that require them to make all the improvements and address all the concerns that potentially are generated because of the existing traffic and because of the changes in the traffic pattern? And from a planning perspective, I would argue that it doesn't. But again, that's ultimately going to be a decision that the commissioners will have to make. I'm not sure if you were, Mr. County Manager, if you were successful in talking to Pat Ivy to see if you could have someone here. Again, I'm not a traffic expert. But again, I can try to muddle through it, but I can't really say any more than that myself from a professional standpoint.
Well, I don't know that this is going to, what I'm speaking of is going to change one way. It's going to change. And somebody, I guess, is taken into account, but I just had not. And everything that's there is part of the traffic, but some, well, if somebody's, if I'm down the road and I decide to come to the drugstore there, then rather than turning in before I get to the stoplight, then when it's all done, I have to come on, and that's all right with me, but I'm not the only one that's going to be doing it. It's going to be a whole lot. They have to come to the intersection and turn, be on 66 and go back. All of the traffic, everything that's there, or will come, will be part of the traffic situation. And what I'm saying is that the pattern is going to change.
You are correct, but it's going to change regardless of the outcome of the zoning case. And again, from a transportation planning and a traffic engineering standpoint, whenever you have as much traffic as is on those two roads, the best thing you can do is to control the movements and send them through a controlled intersection, which is again what is going to happen with the changes, because you're going to have you're basically going to force folks into that intersection. So as part of the planning and engineering for the project, I believe those kind of things have been taken into account. What I can't answer and address is whether or not the planning for those two roads took into account the other future growth that's taking place perhaps on this site and in the projects that are already going to the town of Walkertown.
Perhaps if we have I appreciated, by the way, I appreciated the traffic study that was emailed earlier this week. It was helpful, and it would be good perhaps if folks from Walkertown are here today, they could talk some about their traffic study and the solutions that Davenport Engineering provided.
I wasn't sure if Commissioner Bessie had a question.
It can wait.
Okay.
It can wait.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman Martin and Board. It's great to see everybody again. And just on behalf of the town, I'd like to say we greatly appreciate that the Board did decide to give us time to complete the study. The study was a project that we already had planned to do, and we felt like this would give the Board a beneficial information whenever you were finally considering this proposal. And we think we would get the best value out of this project. The study was funded by a grant from the MPO, so we feel like that it's best that it's being considered and included in this decision. But I just want to be clear that the proposals that the study is showing along this quarter here, our expectation isn't that the developer is going to have to do all these improvements. These improvements are needed with the existing conditions. There are some site-specific issues that we think that could be included in the site plan, and with the as far as conditions with if it is approved. But as far as widening 66, installing the stoplight at the Walkertown Commons, that's issues that the town intends to take to NCDOT, and hopefully either getting it added as an addition to the existing Old Hollow Road project, or find additional funding to extend that to make that part of that project. So we're not suggesting that all that be part of the conditions of the zoning case before you, but we do have a couple of items that the traffic engineers noticed with that particular site that could be incorporated and possibly make it a more mitigate the traffic impact of that development. So before I turn it over to the traffic folks, there was a question, I believe, at the February meeting about the sewer extension, and the town of Walkertown has a agreement with city county utilities that does address extensions outside of the town, and it would apply to this case, because this parcel is included in what is termed in our agreement as a town area of influence, which is an area that is either within the town's ETJ, which the town does not have an ETJ, but we do have a annexation agreement with the town of Kernersville, and that's included within the area of influence definition. And so what it states in our agreement with city county utilities is that in the case where a application is applied to have the sewer extended into that area, the CCUC will direct that applicant to contact the town to be annexed into the town limits. So this was put together in 2000, so annexation laws were different back then. But I think the intent of this was to have this type of development brought into the town if it is being serviced by the public sewer. So with that, I'll turn it over to the folks from Davenport Engineering. Stephen Epley with Davenport will go over the traffic study and answer any questions you got.
Thank you. Steve Epley, I'm with Davenport. We're headquarters here in Winston-Salem. We'll go over the executives or the summary of the transportation study for Old Hollow Road. We were contacted to provide, identify solutions to improve the capacity on Old Hollow Road, NC 66, and the NC 158. Give you an idea of the study area. We looked at 7 intersections, NC 150 or US 158, NC 66, 66, and Neal Trail Drive. Then at Walkertown Commons, then an old 66 Circle, and then we also looked at the proposed driveway at the townhomes. We also looked at the Walkertown Commons Road and Martin Trail Drive, and then at Walkertown Commons Road and NC 158. We looked at the existing conditions out there. There were issues as predicted at NC 66 and 158. It operated level service F, which in common terminology is about like a report card from school. Get A is real good, F is not as good. The other ones that had experience was at Walkertown Commons Road. It also had a level service F. Had long delays, people trying to get out on that one. One of the other issues that we saw was that old 66 Circle intersects NC 66 at a sharp angle. It creates a little bit of issues there. And we come up with some solutions that I'll get to in a little bit. After we looked at the existing conditions, we want to look at the future conditions. We took an annual growth rate. Also took for account several of the planned developments in the area. We had the townhomes. We also looked at Cookout, the Batten Dental Building, a future car wash, another real retail parcel, and then the Tractor Supply Store. We used common engineering practice, used TripGen, determined out what those are, and then distributed those out into the roadway. We also, again, looked at the 2 TIP projects, U5824, which is the 66 widening, and then R2577, which is the US 158 widening. We looked at those. And I'll answer your Commissioner Linville's question in just a few minutes on that one. Looking directly at the NC 66 and US 58 intersection there. Here. And my other one right there. And the analysis, really should have blown this up a little bit more. The level of service that it existing is a level of service E. With the future improvements, and it comes to a level of service D. And then one of our recommendations on that one right there is currently there is a eastbound left turn lane that's only striped for one turn lane at the beginning. One of them will be blocked off. I think it's striped. It's striped before later on to be used as a future conditions to add a double left turn lane there. Our recommendation is to do that up front When you do that, it's still level of service D, but it's a much lower level of service D, which greatly improves the capacity of the intersection. In answer to your question, Commissioner Linville, is yes, the traffic patterns will change with the improvements. Those are taken into an account. The right turn, the right in, right outs, they will have to come down and then make a U-turn. All those traffic volumes are accounted for. There's actually an improved capacity on that. If you add them up, a person wanting to make a left turn coming out of the driveway will sit there for a while wanting to make a turn. But if they did make a right and then go down to the next medium brake and then make a U-turn, it actually takes them less time overall to make that movement.
Could you orient us a little better to that picture? It's pretty busy, but like, just kind of show us 66 going and orient us east-west, and then show us 158.
I have another one a little bit later on. It has all the stuff. I do have another diagram later on that shows all the improvements right there. Does that help out for you?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll just work off this.
So now go back to where you were talking about in that little picture, and just use your finger or something and point on it, or use a cursor and point on it.
There would be, like median break, a median between the intersections right here. But if you were going to, wanted to go for, say from this way going out, instead of making a left turn all the way out, waiting for a delay, you would actually make a right turn, come up to the intersection, make a right turn. You can see a little bulb out right here, so to accommodate the extra area needed for making spaces and then come back. It actually takes less time overall to make those two movements than it does to sit there and make that left turn out. Does that answer your question?
Got that.
Or am I still confusing?
I guess we're just going to have to, I don't know why I hadn't thought of what I was talking about earlier, but I was talking not a DOT person, but someone that was not official, but
6 lane, how many lanes is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lanes of traffic with the auxiliary lanes to go across. You'll be sitting there waiting on a good time, trying to make that gap where you can actually go up or go make that left, right turn, go up to the intersection and make a left under signal control and then come back. It takes less time. It seems like it's a little bit longer, but in the traffic world, it takes a little bit less when you run the numbers. Going back to some of the other intersections, whoops. The intersection of NC 66 at Walkertown Commons. We're recommending a signal there at this particular intersection. It does meet all the signal warrants for that. Helps out with delays. The intersection of NC 66 at Old 66 Circular. We're actually recommending to convert it from an angled driveway is to come up there and angle it off directly, have a 90-degree angle and tie into the townhomes common right there. It's a much easier movement right there, and you're not looking back over your shoulder with that one. It will take cooperation to get that piece of property right there, or easement to go through there. And then at Walkertown Commons Road and Martin Stroh Lane, recommending that the pavement markings and signing to the intersection be reinforced to enforce the three-way stop right there to help with one-way flow. configuration. Looking at pedestrian combinations, looking at high visibility and pedestrian signals at the Walkertown Commons NC 66 intersection, and also providing continuous sidewalk along the north side of NC 66 from Walkertown Commons Road to the Old Hollow Road townhomes. Going through a couple of the other ones, back our summary. Just to give you a recap, we looked at the dental office that came up is located in this area right here. Cookouts, which is currently under construction, is right there. Car wash, along with some retails going adjacent to that. And then you've got Tractor Supply that's coming over here. And then you've got the Old Town, the townhomes over here. Over there. And then our analysis resulted the up here at the NC 66 is to go ahead and make that dual eastbound left turn lane open up at the beginning. This is something we'll have to talk with NCDOT with.
But can you point that out right there where you're, can you use your cursor and show exactly where that is? Is that in the state project?
Yeah, that's in the state project.
So
they are currently at the very beginning wanting to, as you can see right here, they've got one left turn lane out there, and they've got another. They're going to build both dual lanes, but they're going to stripe it out so it comes on a later future date. We're asking to bring it on at the very beginning, not stripe it out and have dual lanes at the very beginning.
I got you. Okay, it's not building another lane, it's just opening that lane up.
It'll be constructed during the project. It's just striped out instead of striping it out. Go ahead and open up for business.
That makes sense.
The other thing that we're also looking at is, and what take DOT cooperation, is currently the NC 66 widening project stops right near Biscuitville, is to extend the dual lanes all the way down to the townhomes, along with signalizing the Walkertown Commons Road intersection. That dual lane capacity greatly increases the level of service in that area.
I know you did this for Walkertown, but has there been any conversation with DOT?
Not as of yet. We wanted to present this to y'all first, and then our next step is to take any comments you had, incorporate it to the final, and get it to DOT in front of them. So that's our next step, is to get in front of them.
Got it. Other questions from Davenport folks? Go ahead.
Did you give any consideration to extension of the sidewalk from Walkertown Commons Road intersection down to the entrance to the townhomes?
Yes.
Is that in the report?
Yeah, it is in the report. It's
A continuous sidewalk.
Yeah, it is included in there.
Because it seems like the actual walkability is minimal without that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I put it on this slide, but I will update this slide to include that when we talk to DOT and stuff.
Any other questions? I got a couple questions. Maybe you talk to Walkertown folks a little bit about.
Okay, I'll let him come back up here.
So what is it? You may be able to speak for your board, but just generally speaking, what do you think, if this comes up for approval, what is, you mentioned in your just earlier comments about there's some things you thought ought to be done before approval or would be done by the contractor, for example, by the developer rather, and some things that could wait. Obviously timing is an issue, and when you've outlined several projects there, the little cutover down there from into 66 right in front of the entrance, the red light, the widening of the roads. I mean, those are kind of the big things. So what is that, what are those lists of things that you think satisfies it, that would be something reasonable to request the developer do?
I believe those are the realignment of Old 66 Circle, not necessarily the installation or the removal of the existing road, but the property owner is the same property owner for both lots.
Okay.
So a request of dedicating that right-of-way to facilitate the future installation of that would be beneficial, especially if you're considering, it was brought up at the other meeting, there's a stub street to the north side here, and there's vacant, it's currently farmland, so there's potential in future development there. Kind of looking down the road, that possibly that could be a connection and even more traffic coming through that intersection there. It may at some point in time be necessary to signalize that section to control the traffic flow there too. So having the ability to realign that Old 66 Circle, at least the right-of-way, available to have it dedicated to NCDOT to facilitate that future improvement would be beneficial. The town, the Commissioner Bessie brought up the sidewalk. The town has coming before us, I believe in April, the final development plan for the dental office, the Baton Dental office, and their sidewalks are going to be installed per our UDO within the right-of-way along the road with curb and gutter. Our concern with the sidewalk on the site plan for the townhomes is that they're misaligned, that they don't connect currently. So, and it looks to us that the sidewalk is being proposed to be built outside of the right-of-way. So our concern is that those sidewalks aren't going to be connected, as it looks like on the site plan. So at least, the southern section, we're not so much concerned about if there's connectivity, within the what's shown on the site plan currently, but we think that sidewalk should be connected to the future sidewalk that will be at the Baton Dental office, or at least a requirement that it be connected to what would be built whenever. That would give you that connectivity to the shopping center. And also, in the engineering report, they did, I know it is a condition that is agreed with the petitioner at this point of installing the turn lanes on 66, but the engineering report gives a specific amount of storage that's needed to facilitate that. I think it's at least 100 feet. So it may be beneficial to have that as a condition of defining what those turn lanes need to be.
And it does seem like that the turn lane part was in the original proposal. I'm kind of looking over at Chris. I think there was going to be a turn lane, and I don't know if it was 100. I assume 100 feet on either side of the entrance.
Yeah, 100 feet is what's recommended in the traffic study, but I don't believe it's on the conditions of the proposed.
I think I remember there's a turn lane required, but it may not have a footage.
Doesn't have a specific.
May not have a footage requirement.
That's correct. And again, that's not unusual in that generally it's handled at again, it's one of those things where today the traffic study may say it needs to be X, but then if they don't build the project for 3 or 4 years, it may say Y. And if NCDOT provides specific standards related to what the driveway permit is, but at the time they issue permits, it's actually, they need more than that. I think that sort of handcuffs them. So the comments that were included by NCDOT in the interdepartmental comments just says driveway permit required, Randy Ogburn is the primary point of contact. We prefer how it be submitted, blah, blah, blah. Left and right turn lanes are required for both entrances, but it doesn't give any specificity as to what that is, again, because I think it would be determined at the time of the driveway permit. But again, if the commissioners wanted some assurances that it would be at least X, I think you could do that, and then when they apply, the NCDOT says it needs to be Y. Well, if Y is greater than X, you're fine. So again, if you wanted to have some minimum standards, perhaps that's something that you could entertain.
Gotcha. And I take it you all have had no conversation with DOT?
Not yet. Well, we've had previous conversations about the needs here, but not since this. This report's pretty fresh. So our board did brief it at our last workshop meeting. But as far as taking it to DOT with any specific review, that's part of our work with Davenport for them to present it to them.
And no any conversation with the developer?
No, we don't have any contact with the developer.
Mr. Chairman, since this is the first item on our agenda and it's taken quite some time, I wondered if next week if Chris and Gordon, our attorney, could present us with what's reasonable. I know when the petitioners were here, they felt they had already agreed to the improvements that they thought they were responsible for. Could you all update this and give us an idea of what's reasonable by next week, please? Since we've already taken a
Good.
lot.
Oh, no, it's good. That's okay. You guys can do that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, those are for this specific site and the proposal. That's
okay. That's great.
That's what the town is hoping to have incorporated into the conditions of it.
Everybody happy with moving on? Item 2. Okay. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I need to X out of this one? Okay. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't closing something I didn't need to. X. Close tabs. Yes. Oops. I think I shouldn't have closed all tabs. Yeah, I did. There we go. Okay. I believe the next item on the agenda is F-1627, which is something that the county commissioners don't see very often, but it is an elected body special use permit. And this is a request of David and Betty Lawson for a 73.45 acre site located on the east side of Piney Grove Road, across from Lawson Acres Drive. The request is for an elected body special use permit for a land clearing and inert debris landfill greater than 2 acres and then 2 borrow sites. And a land clearing and inert debris landfill is just what it sounds like. It's not a sanitary landfill. It is for whenever grading contractors and folks like that go out and clear land. You can bring dirt, rock, soil, other inert debris, and basically help fill in land. And it gives the property owner a benefit, and it gives the development folks a benefit in having somewhere to dispose of this material. As I did mention, this is an elected body special use permit. At this point, I want to turn to Gordon so that he can provide with a little bit of insight into the special use permit process, which does differ slightly from a standard rezoning case.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So this is different. When Chris appears before you, almost always, he's here with either a UDO amendment or a rezoning request. Those are all considered legislative. And so you have a lot of freedom to talk to people, to consider things in a legislative hearing. What's before you with a special use permit is a quasi-judicial hearing. So you are acting like a judge, you're acting like a court. And so what that means is when this comes before you in 2 weeks, it will be based on sworn testimony. So people will have to testify during the hearing, and your decision needs to be based on the evidence. There should be no communications outside of that hearing. If somebody calls you up about this matter, you should not speak with them, because it's as Commissioner Bessie would know, that's called an ex parte communication, and typically that's frowned upon because no one should have an unfair advantage. And so feel free to tell people, come here for the hearing if you are going to testify for that. Testimony must be based on relevant facts, and some testimonies such as traffic projections or property valuations need to be based upon expert testimony. Now again, I'm talking about a quasi-judicial hearing, not a rezoning, so it's different for this type of hearing. So if somebody comes up and has just a general complaint, that's not enough to carry the day. You'll be required to make 4 findings, which you do for all these cases. The first one is that the use will not materially engender the public health or safety. The second one is that the use meets all required conditions and specifications. So those typically aren't an issue. The third is that the use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property. But that would need to be based on really expert testimony that there really is real injury there. And then the final one is that the location and character of the use is developed according to the application and plan submissions, will be in harmony with the area in which it's located, and will be in general conformity with legacy. So those are the general findings. Once the proponent of a special use permit has introduced evidence as to those, the burden shifts to any opponents, if there are any, and they have to have specific evidence that would show that one of those 4 findings is not satisfied. And again, a general complaint about I don't want it is really not enough. So that's just a general background, and I'm just bringing this up because we only hear these about every 4 or 5 years, and so I know that we're all a little bit rusty on this, but at the end, there will be an order in which it's laid out that either you found those 4 required findings or that one of them you haven't found, and so you're denying it based on that. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but the real evidence, as I said, will be put on in 2 weeks at the hearing.
How much area can be opened and using at one time?
I'll get to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And by the way, Chris, what is a borrow site?
It is, it's basically where you have soil, topsoil, and you go and remove that, and it's taken somewhere else. You're borrowing from one site and taking it to another. And there are limitations on that. You can't have more than 1 acre of that open at one time, or it's considered a mine. So that's the only limitation. On the LCID itself, they can do the entire 75 acres. They're more than likely not going to do it that way because that's a lot to take on at one point. But the borrow site, you can't have more than 1 acre at a time.
Okay.
This is where the proposal is located. It's located in Growth Management Area 5 there on the east side of Piney Grove Road. This is, and that's in GMA 5, the rural area. This is the location map. It shows the subject property highlighted in yellow. You notice an LIS zoned piece of property to the south along Piney Grove Road. That is Mr. Lawson's existing LCID. Staff, we had some discussions with the petitioner about whether or not to rezone the property or do the special use permit. We felt like that the special use permit was the more appropriate route because it did not require rezoning and it did not introduce additional industrial land or zoning in this area. So they chose to go the special use permit route, which is why that will be, while it's going to be heard the way it's going to be heard. It's not a rezoning, it's a special use permit. And that is allowed in RS40 with an elected body special use permit. This is the subject property shown on the countywide aerial photo. You notice most of the site is currently wooded. You do see some streams on there. These are some images taken from around the site. This is looking east across Piney Grove Road towards the entrance. Of course, this property has been, it's not been totally unused. I believe, there are some things that have probably been done on this in the past. I don't know whether it's been timber, whether there have been some agricultural uses or something else, but this is looking at where the entrance would be. This is looking west from the entrance across Piney Grove Road. This is looking north along Piney Grove Road. The entrance is further to the north on the same side of the road. On the right-hand side of the road. This is looking south along Piney Grove Road. The site is to the left. And in that image, you do see it's not the standard red sign, but it's a purple sign for the special use permit. You see that attached to the telephone pole on the left-hand side of the image there. This is the site plan that was submitted for F-1627. It does show the various LCID cells. It does show kind of the road, the haul road, so to speak, that will go to the various locations. It does show, again, a series of 1 acre and less borrow sites. Again, all that is, these are use conditions in the UDO. There are some state law requirements related to, how LCIDs are regulated and permitted. They have to go through this approval process through the Board of Commissioners in this RS-40 zoning, but in order for them to actually establish the LCID, they have to get permits from DENR, and there is some regular monitoring of the sites they will have to also go through beyond just the approval by the commissioners, if that's what the commissioners do choose to do.
Before you leave that picture, you're getting closer. I wanted to know what the numbers read on is it just one gigantic ravine going down to near where that pond is?
I mean, again, this is one of the reasons why folks do LCIDs is because you have a lot of topography. But yes, it is a ravine that pulls through that area. There are some other areas, again, that will be filled around that. But yes, that's a stormwater management pond and a sedimentation and erosion control pond that is part of the requirements through the state.
Can you? I can't read the numbers. Is it 5 feet? Well, how much drop is there between that string of numbers on the kind of as it looks toward the northwest side?
The bold numbers and the bold lines, that represents 10 feet. There's actually 1 foot contours on this image, I believe. It's either 1 foot or 2 foot, but for each solid line, it's a 10-foot drop. So you're going 8, 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. So you've got like a 60, 70-foot drop there.
Wow.
And again, this is just a zoomed in area that shows a stockpile area, an area that, again, just kind of zoomed in, showing where the gravel access road will be connected out to Piney Grove Road. You see some future borrow sites. Again, there are limitations that you can't have more than an acre at a time open for a borrow site. Again, Gordon kind of went over the analysis of the Board of Commissioners' findings. I'm not going to go over these today because, again, I think that information is more pertinent when we actually hold the public hearing. Just the action needed. An LCID is a permitted use in RS-40 zoning district with the issuance of an elected body special use permit. Following a site plan review by the Planning Board, the site plan did go to the Planning Board at their February 9th, 2023 meeting. The Planning Board did determine that the site plan does meet the UDO requirements. The action that will be needed will be to hold a public hearing and make a determination on the 4 findings. And then based on the actions or based on the findings that you make regarding those 4 findings, then you would either issue or deny the special use permit request. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
How much field area can eventually be used in the sales? Or how much do all the sales that you're talking about in there eventually?
I have no earthly idea. I'm assuming you're talking about how much field can you fill in this LCID, the total acreage.
Acreage-wise, you did describe it as different sales, didn't you?
Or is that just the borrow sites?
I mean, again, I believe that will determine. You can probably better answer and ask that question related to the site plan preparer, the engineer, whenever they get up here. It's a total site of like 75 acres. There's some buffering requirements and those kind of things. But other than that, I'm not sure if they're going to do it. It seems like there are a number of phases that they are going to be filling this in by, not just one entire thing at a time. They might be able to answer that question. There's not an ordinance requirement that says you can only do this much at a time and you have to have this kind of cell and that kind of thing. There's not anything related to that.
But they're not going to be here till the time of when we consider the decision. Is that right?
Who won't be here? I'm sorry, the petitioner and or their engineer should be here at the public hearing on the 30th.
But what he's getting at, not next week in the briefing.
No.
Well, I'd certainly relay the question. I think the question kind of is, what's the reasonable build-out given the borrow versus the area you're going to be filling? And so we could relay that question to them, make sure they have it.
That's probably, by it being 70 total acres, over 70, plus your buffer that you got all the way around, it'll be buffer all the way around all of the perimeter of the property, won't it? And is there any condition about how much open that can be actively being filled at the same time?
I can read from the staff report what it says about this. It says approximately 10.23 acre LCID landfill and borrow sites totaling 20.59 acres of the 73.45 acre site are proposed to be open in phases in order to limit ground disturbing area. The borrow site will be less than 1 acre actively disturbed at any given time.
Well, as far as I know, I've never heard any, never been there 2-3 times, but never heard any complaints about their current operation. But I think they're just filling an area about maybe 2 acres in size. But if someone is allowed to fill a good size area, it be working on it at the same time, then that could cause more traffic, and then that's activity, and then that's when you start to get complaints. So I don't know all the questions asked beforehand, Chris. If I did, you could then have them written down and answer them. But if I could figure a way to do that, I'd do it and make it easier on you.
I understand. Again, there are lots of various levels of LCIDs. You have currently in the UDO, if you're 2 acres or less, you can do an LCID by just going to, in RS40 zoning, by just going to the planning board and having a site plan approved. Whenever you get over 2 acres, you either have to rezone to a district that allows an LCID or get a special use permit. So in this case, because they're going to have this large area and they're going to open up more than 2 acres at a time, they are going through the special use permit process to do that. Again, the county attorney was right. That is what the staff report says regarding the various acreages, but that's why they're going through the process they're going through versus the 2 acre or less, because they do have a much larger area than 2 acres to fill.
Well, about a year ago when we did the one on Watkins Ford Road, was it just a zoning, or it seemed like to me it was a zoning, or was it this process?
I believe it was probably a zoning.
Any other questions? Right, I think we're ready for number 3.
Next. The next request is UDO CC 19, the petitioner's Planning and Development Services staff. This is to amend Chapter 9, non-conforming uses of the UDO to revise off-street parking requirements for restaurant uses in older buildings in both GMAs 1 and 2, which is downtown or urban city centers and urban neighborhoods. A little bit of background: in 2006, UDO 160 was approved by both the city and the commissioners, which provided greater flexibility for changes of use in older non-residential buildings. These provisions allowed changes of use to occur in buildings constructed prior to 1968 for the county and 1988 in the city, without requirements to provide additional off-street parking.
Only restaurant uses were still required to comply with the parking standards, or they could seek an approved elected body special use permit, the process we just discussed in the last case, if they wanted to establish a restaurant without meeting the parking requirements. These uses were excluded from the parking provisions due to concerns regarding insufficient off-street parking that could contribute to overflow of vehicles onto adjoining neighborhood streets. Many businesses in GMA 1 and 2 are located within older structures that are non-conforming to off-street parking. Since 2006, there have been 7 special use permits, but they've all been within the city, that have been requested for restaurant parking exemptions, and all were approved. 4 of the 7 parking exemptions have been approved since 2020, showing increased interest in reusing buildings within the city's urban core. All 7 of the special use permit requests, again, have gone to City Council, none to the commissioners. In summary, the proposed text amendment revises the UDO to remove the requirement of an elected body special use permit for a reduction in required off-street parking for restaurant uses in older commercial buildings. Any existing parking on site must be retained. That's been a consistent requirement in that section. The proposed language will simplify the approval process for applicants to establish restaurant uses in GMAs 1 and 2 to promote more adaptive reuse of existing buildings. Staff does not anticipate any significant negative impacts to surrounding residential neighborhoods as a result of the change. This was heard by the Planning Board at the November 10th, 2022 public hearing. There were no speakers in opposition, and the Planning Board did vote 8-1 to recommend approval of this request, and this was adopted by City Council in February of 2023. In full disclosure, this really doesn't have a lot of bearing in the county because the county does not have a lot of growth management areas 1 and 2. There is no growth management area 2 that I'm aware of anywhere within the county's zoning jurisdiction. Within the town of Rural Hall and within the town of Tobaccoville, there are some town centers that are GMA 1. So this ordinance would allow for adaptive reuse of a building that was built prior to 1968 to be converted into a restaurant without meeting the parking requirement. But again, in my time in the planning and development services, we haven't had any such requests. But again, it would provide greater flexibility. It is business friendly, which is one of the things that we do seek to do. And again, in order to keep the ordinance consistent between the city and the county, the county did adopt UDO 160 back in 2006, again, even though you have very limited GMAs 1 and 2 areas. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions, but I did want to provide that context.
I just want to say, of course, I live in the city. I can tell you that it can cause some problems in neighborhoods from restaurants and whatnot. It can cause a lot of congestion on the residential streets. I will not publicly give you an example, but I can certainly take you to one that really has changed a neighborhood residential street and made it very difficult to drive through the street. So that's just my little speech.
Any other questions for Chris? Ready for number 4?
Yes. And the final item for today for me, I do believe, is, and if I can find it, is UDO CC20. And this again is another, this is a request. Staff does propose this text amendment to require that the first and bottom layer of asphalt, and again, I don't know why it's starting from this slide. That's what I sent. Anyway. The first bottom layer of asphalt in the subdivision streets be installed prior to the acceptance of the final surety for the remaining infrastructure and for final plat recordation. This amendment was requested by our interdepartmental review staff to clarify the street construction requirements which must be met prior to the signing of a final plat which permits the conveyance of lots. It does codify existing policy to reduce confusion. Our local development community understood these changes whenever they were made back in the mid-2000s, but we have had some questions and concerns that have been brought up by some out-of-town developers over the last several years. Again, this requirement has been the policy for years and is well understood by local developers. Again, there was some confusion among developers based in other markets thinking that final subdivision plats could be recorded with just the stone base down installed over the water, sewer, and storm lines, but not with the asphalt being down. This amendment was presented to what we call our quarterly development forum, where all of the development-related departments in the city and the county get together with local developers, real estate professionals, engineers and designers to discuss issues. That was done back in September of 2022. There were no issues or concerns expressed at that meeting. We did follow that up and actually sent the language out to them as we had promised that we would, and asked them to email us any concerns that they had. And again, there were no concerns that were conveyed to us via email. This public hearing was held by the Planning Board on December 8th, 2022. There was no opposition. Following the public hearing, the Planning Board did vote unanimously to recommend approval of this request. This was adopted by City Council in February of 2023. I do want to point out that whenever under the old UDO that was adopted in 1995, the subdivision regulations within that ordinance only went to the Planning Board for changes. They didn't come to the elected body. When we adopted the UDO Clear Code back in 2018, we put everything together. So it has the subdivision regulations. So the commissioners really haven't seen these type of changes in the past. But again, I do want to assure you that we do reach out and talk to developers to make sure that they understand what we're trying to do. And again, we heard no complaints on this issue. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions for Chris?
Thank you very much.
All righty. Back to the county manager.
All right, very good. I'll step through the items that we're working on that will be finalized this week. As is our practice, these will be published so they can see them.
Agendas are published by 2 p.m. on Tuesdays.
2 p.m. on Tuesday. So you'll see these items that we're working on now that will be published. So I'll briefly run through what we've got that you'll see. You've got a special resolution on the Forsyth County's 911 telecommunicators and emergency services and the Sheriff's Department. It's National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. That is one item that we're working on related to your chair and vice chair had gotten with me. And one of their ideas is that once a month we'll have sort of celebrations of success. And so we're working on bringing those to you one time a month. And we've got a few items we're working on related to that. Approval of minutes obviously will be forthcoming. You've got two budget finance items. You've got a budget ordinance amendment appropriating behavioral health reserve fund balance for security services in the behavioral health urgent care clinic. Really a need that we're trying to backfill, and we want to use some one-time dollars to do that at that facility. And there are some other changes kind of coming around that facility that we'll talk about as well. Item 8 is the work that has been done around the issuance of bonds that we will do later this year. And so it's really one of the first items to introduce related to that, the resolution that makes certain statements of fact concerning proposed bond issues. We have been working and met with the school system around the strategy if we maximize the two-thirds bond issuance over the next two-thirds bonds periods, and then also sort of claim the GO authority, general obligation authority that we have remaining, we can issue almost $80 million worth of additional debt for school needs. And then, hopefully, what that opens the doors is a bond issue or bond referendum in 2028 with no tax increase. And so we'll dive into that, and Lee will be available to kind of step through what that plan looks like.
I have questions, Chairman, relative to this. We were waiting for the report from the school board in terms of what their needs were for the facilities. And maybe someone else has gotten that information. I have not. So that would be helpful for me relative to making decisions around this agenda item.
Yeah, I think the upshot of that is they have a lot of work to do moving forward around that. And so what we'll be able to share is the unmet needs coming out of the final issuance of debt. And so, they've got a lot to sort out around growth in student populations or decline in student population, what happens there, other facilities.
So I guess more my question is, are we putting the cart before the horses in terms of needing to know exactly what
It's really
they
a
would need
public policy decision around if you don't maximize the debt issuance, you lose some ability because it's general obligation debt. And so that's already been authorized. And so if you don't use it, you lose it.
Okay.
And so it's really strategy around that. Only a portion of it you'll see is issued, the first two-thirds bond issuance and then the capacity issued is part of that. And then in 2 years, you'll have another opportunity to issue more. But
There's a deadline for that, isn't it in March?
yeah, well, it's really, I think, by the end of the authorization sort of disappears by the end of this fiscal year. So,
And the school system just did not feel that they could come up with a reliable list that quickly, but whatever they come up with, it will come to us, and we can approve it or not approve it.
I
But
agree with that.
it was just something that quickly to meet the deadline, they just didn't feel they could come up with a complete list. Is that not what you remember? though?
Yes. Yes, and it's not a requirement to spend it.
Right.
I get that, but I just need to know, like, what is their timetable to turn around the information?
we'll make sure, I know Daryl's here today, we'll make sure that that they understand this is important and they need some staff here to talk through what they're able to do and,
That would be helpful
their
for me.
perspective
But
on that.
anyways.
So.
Or at least talk about what a $77 million amount would do for
I
them.
agree.
And
Thank you.
I think that's probably pretty simple. That part.
Okay, thanks.
Very good. All right, you have 3 ARPA projects. We are narrowing in on all these contracts, and so we'll update you on that as well. But, one of them is a resolution approving an agreement with Work Family Resource Center to support new licensed family child care homes with American Rescue Plan Act funds. You've got a execution of agreement with CARE. It was doing business as Delicious by Shireen for workforce development training, and then an agreement with Hands On Northwest North Carolina for nonprofit training and support. So we've got those 3, and you'll hear those in detail. 3 contracts. You've got a contract with McNaughton Division of Brodart, which is basically a lot of the books. When you go check out a book at the library, they're actually leased books. It's just a more efficient and cost-effective way to get books on the shelves, especially the new releases and those kinds of things. We've got an agreement with Vanguard Professional Services for temporary child welfare staff. As you know, we are struggling on a staffing perspective there, and then also a change order for Contract Business Solutions for furniture for the new courthouse project. Y'all approved that a bit ago. Damon's working on a change order that he needs to bring in related to that. I've got 2 property matters that are kind of related. It's really around some movement at the Highland Avenue Center that we're going to make to accommodate some construction. And so Kirby will be available, and Chantel can talk to you a little bit about what the construction on that site looks like and what we're trying to do there. Got a bunch of appointments, and they probably close Wednesday, I bet.
They close on Monday,
Close next Monday.
this coming Monday.
Which, yeah. It's been a long day. Yeah.
It's okay.
4 days now, whatever. All right. And so, and I did want to mention that we've used our new communications resource that the board was so kind and strategic to get to us. And so Ed's been working to get opportunities for service out there in the community. And so hopefully we're going to see see that effort play out in additional applicants for those. And we, on the Longworth show, we actually had some of those folks who served on those committees interviewed by Jim. And so, that basically said how appreciative they were to be able to serve. And so hopefully we're going to make some progress there. Damon is going to review an ordinance change related to the Forsyth County Code, the animals section of the Forsyth County Code. That really is to accommodate code changes needed to get us back in that direct service provision. And so he'll be working on that. You've got some refunds, and then you've got Kirby's and his crew at General Services have a sold asset report from GovDeals. So that is it. A lot.
Move we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second? I'll second that.
Can I just mention before you vote, Chantel, do you want to talk about what's going to happen in an hour and 35 minutes in this room?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Manager. North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services will be hosting a mental health town hall here in the Forsyth County Chambers from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Tonight. So we hope to see everyone there.
All righty. We're adjourned. Stand adjourned.